You ever notice how certain men seem to live inside a constant storm? Not because life is uniquely cruel to them, but because chaos somehow keeps finding its way back into their orbit, no matter how hard they try to keep things together. It's like every time they think they've built stability, something, or someone, arrives to shake it apart again. A new crisis at work, another emotionally draining relationship, another decision that seemed smart at first but ended up costing more than it gave. And if you've lived long enough, you know the truth. Patterns like that are not accidents. You don't attract chaos because the world hates you. You attract chaos because, at some level, your nervous system has learned to feel alive only inside it. For many men, especially in their 30s and 40s, this realization is both terrifying and liberating, because it forces you to confront a truth most people spend their lives avoiding: that your external world will always organize itself around your internal state. The chaos out there mirrors the conflict in here. Until you face what's unsettled inside you, life will keep handing you situations that echo it. So in this conversation, we'll explore why chaos seems to follow you, why you subconsciously create it even when you swear you don't want it, and, most importantly, how to stop feeding it. There are 5 hidden dynamics that drive this cycle. Each one is psychological, invisible, and entirely self-correcting once it's brought into awareness. But until you see them, they run the show. Let's start with the first one, the one that's easiest to miss because it wears the mask of competence. 1. You mistake intensity for aliveness. From the outside, chaos looks like exhaustion. But deep down, it can feel like excitement. That's the paradox. For many men, the nervous system has been trained since childhood to equate stillness with danger. Maybe you grew up in a house where peace never lasted long, where calm was only the pause before the next argument or unpredictable mood swing. Maybe you learned early that being on edge was safer than being relaxed, because at least tension gave you time to prepare. So, even as an adult, when life gets quiet, part of you unconsciously looks for something to break the silence. You might pick a fight with your partner without meaning to, take on too many commitments, or overthink every small decision just to generate movement. It's not that you want drama. It's that stillness feels unfamiliar, and the body resists what it doesn't recognize as safe. Chaos gives you stimulation, and stimulation feels like life, even when it's burning you out. The path out of this begins with re-educating your nervous system that calm is not the same as boredom, that peace does not equal danger, that the man who can sit still without panic is more powerful than the one who keeps chasing motion just to feel alive. And that brings us to the second driver, the hidden belief that chaos equals control. If this journey eases something inside you, stay with us. Subscribe, and each step will bring a little more clarity. Thank you. 2. You use chaos to stay in control. It sounds contradictory, but many men unconsciously create chaos precisely because it's familiar, predictable even. You might think of chaos as random, but to the unconscious mind, it's a controlled environment, a loop you already know how to survive. When life is calm, you lose your old defenses. There's space for emotions you've been avoiding, space for questions about meaning, purpose, or loneliness. And if those questions start getting too loud, the mind will find a way to drown them out, through conflict, overwork, reckless choices, or distractions disguised as opportunities. You don't consciously choose chaos, but subconsciously, it's easier to manage external crises than to sit with internal ones. Arguing with your boss is safer than admitting you hate your job. Running into another complicated relationship is easier than confronting your fear of intimacy. You see, the ego prefers a familiar hell to an unfamiliar peace. This is why many high-functioning men keep finding themselves at the center of storms, not because they're cursed, but because their sense of identity depends on managing something. If everything actually went smoothly, they wouldn't know who to be. The shift begins when you stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What part of me keeps needing this to happen?" Because the chaos that repeats is not punishment, it's information. It's the psyche's way of showing you what still needs healing. We'll go deeper into that in the next part, but first, I want to pause and ask you something directly. When was the last time you realized that the problem you were fixing was one you quietly helped create? Maybe not intentionally, but through your habits, your expectations, your reactions. If you're willing, share that in the comments. Not for judgment, for reflection. Because honesty spoken out loud is the first act of liberation. 3. You confuse urgency with importance. Another reason chaos clings to your life is that you've been conditioned to equate being busy with being valuable. The modern world rewards urgency. Fast responses, quick results, endless productivity. And you've likely internalized that rhythm so deeply that stillness feels like failure. You wake up already chasing. You move through the day in constant reaction, answering messages, solving problems, responding to demands, never pausing long enough to ask whether what you're doing actually matters. Chaos becomes a lifestyle, not a circumstance. What you call pressure is often just disorganization of priorities, and what you call responsibility sometimes hides avoidance. Because as long as you're overwhelmed, you don't have to face the deeper question of what you really want. The ego thrives in noise. Silence exposes it. The man who cannot be still will always find himself in chaos, even when external life looks calm, because internally, he's addicted to motion. So begin to challenge the culture of urgency in your own life. Start asking, is this truly important, or does it just make me feel needed? Because being needed is not the same as being fulfilled. Jung would say that men at midlife must learn to shift from outer achievement to inner alignment, from doing to being. You're not here to keep proving your worth. You're here to express it through presence. And presence requires quiet. Which brings us to the fourth pattern, the emotional one most men refuse to see. 4. You attract chaos because you haven't made peace with your emotions. Every emotion you repress becomes a magnet for chaos. That's not poetic, it's psychological. If you bury anger, life will send you people who provoke it. If you bury grief, life will arrange circumstances that force you to feel loss again. If you bury shame, you'll keep finding yourself in situations that trigger humiliation or self-doubt. You don't need to believe in energy or spirituality to understand this. It's pure behavioral repetition. The psyche brings back what it hasn't completed. Until you learn to relate consciously to your emotions, they'll keep showing up unconsciously in your relationships, your work, your decisions. Most men were never taught how to process emotion. You were taught to endure, to analyze, to fix. So when feelings surface, you tighten, you push them down, you reach for logic because it feels safer than vulnerability. But emotions don't disappear when ignored. They distort. They start governing your tone, your choices, your reactions. They become the undercurrent behind every conflict. Learning emotional literacy isn't weakness, it's strategy. It means knowing the difference between feeling and acting, between acknowledging anger and weaponizing it. It means learning to stay conscious even when triggered, instead of unconsciously recreating chaos as a release valve. The man who can name what he feels gains leverage over what once ruled him. That's what emotional maturity looks like. Not softness, but sovereignty. And that leads us to the fifth and final reason chaos keeps circling your life: the absence of grounded purpose. 5. You haven't chosen what your life is actually about. When you don't know what your life is for, everything feels urgent, everything demands your energy, everything becomes chaos. Most men don't have too many problems. They have too little direction. You can't filter out distractions when you don't know what matters most. So you chase everything that sparkles, every project, every opportunity, every relationship that promises intensity. Because deep down, you're still trying to find a feeling of meaning that only commitment can create. Purpose doesn't arrive fully formed. It emerges when you start living as if your time matters. When you start saying no to what doesn't align. When you stop letting other people's emergencies dictate your priorities. Without that anchor, you're like a ship in open water. Strong engines, no compass. You'll keep moving, but you'll never feel like you're getting anywhere. Grounded purpose doesn't mean knowing your final destination. It means knowing what values steer your course. Truth, courage, integrity, depth. When those become your coordinates, chaos loses interest. Because chaos feeds on confusion. Once you become clear, it starves. If you keep attracting chaos, it's not because you're cursed. It's because your psyche is still trying to heal through repetition. Chaos is the curriculum of men who have outgrown the boyhood fantasy of control, but haven't yet learned the adult art of surrender. You don't need to fight chaos. You need to listen to it. Every storm in your life is revealing where you've built on unstable ground, where you've confused motion for meaning, intensity for intimacy, distraction for direction. The goal isn't to live without storms, it's to build yourself sturdy enough to remain steady through them. And if you truly want peace, you have to stop chasing the adrenaline of survival and start cultivating the disciplines of stability. You must teach your body that calm is safe, your mind that silence is strength, and your heart that peace is not weakness but power mastered. So if you recognize yourself in these words, if you've spent years putting out fires that you secretly started, if you're tired of drama disguised as destiny, this is your invitation to stop feeding chaos by facing what it's been trying to show you. The man who owns his inner storm becomes the calm that others can stand near without fear. That's your work now, not perfectly, reliably. Begin. If you've stayed with me until now, it means you're searching for something deeper, maybe an answer you've carried since childhood. Don't stop here. Perhaps the next video holds the key you've been waiting for, the piece that helps you untangle another thread of your story.